I think we're good.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Today is May 8th, 2025. We are meeting in person and virtually at the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board at 9:32 a.m. Today's meeting will be recorded. To better manage our meeting, if you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand to be recognized. Once recognized, please come to the podium and state your name. Written comments on today's agenda items should have been received by email or on our website by the close of business yesterday, May 7th, 2025. All public comments today will be limited to 2 minutes per person. The chat feature has been turned off. If you have technical difficulties, please email us at askus@wsgc.wa.gov. I will now call the roll. So we have Vice Chair Sarah Lawson, present. Commissioner Anders Ibsen.
Here.
Commissioner Michael Charles.
Here.
Senator Conway. Senator Holy. Representative Kloba. And Representative Waters.
Here.
All right, so we'll go ahead and begin our meeting with the consent agenda, the April 10th, 2025 Commission meeting minutes, new licenses and Class 3 David employees, and the House Bank Card and Room list. Do we have any commissioner comments on any of those things? Any public comments? All right, we have a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, next up we have our election of officers. Are there any public comment on that? No. Okay, do we have any nominations for chair?
I nominate Commissioner Levy as Commission Chair for the term to begin at the conclusion of the May 2025 meeting through the election of new officers in 2026.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other further discussion or other nominations? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Nominate Commissioner Lawson for Vice Chair.
Second.
Okay, and that nomination will conclude at the end of today's meeting and through the election of new officers in 2026. Okay, to amend it that way. All right. Are there any other nominations? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 And right.
All right, congratulations. Okay, next up we have the executive director report. Dr.
Good
Griffin.
morning, commissioners, chair, and ex officio Waters. So our IT modernization project continues. Things are really ramping up. We've done a lot of just education or just information passing along to you all as to what our progress is. Now that we're in development stage and expect to go live in mid-January of 2026, we definitely need to start reaching out and begin testing for with applicants, licensees, and our tribal partners, because this new project will impact our My Account, which is how licensees, applicants, and tribal partners do business with us on a daily basis, through that My Account system. And so it will have new features and it will obviously be different. So we will be sending a lot more information out to engage licensees, applicants, and tribal partners here in the very near future to make sure that they are aware. They can also have opportunities to participate in the testing of those features and provide feedback so that we make sure it's conducive to, easy, user-friendly operations. So more to come on that, but we will definitely be launching that communication very soon and start posting on our website, etc. Also in the written director's report, there's a number of highlights of staff education and training that has been provided in this last 4 months. So we've provided training to over 400 individuals in various organizations. And so we do rely heavily on education and training. That is really at the forefront of our program to ensure the involuntary compliance. Our numbers are small, number of licensees, and so we're also thrilled to actually be receiving invites for a lot of these organizations to come and provide the training. And so we're always encouraged by that. And then also the agency was recognized in April by the Secretary of State, the Combined Fund Drive. This is a workplace giving program within the state for state employees and retired state employees to give to charities. And we were recognized for the most volunteer hours outside of work hours by a small agency. So staff coordinated a number of activities, and we also had a staff member, Bill Spring, special agent, I think he's going to be talking today, that was also recognized by the Secretary of State through an award for their excellent participation as part of the Combined Fund Drive team. And so those were nominations from various Combined Fund Drive program team members. So that is all I have for you today.
Very cool. Congratulations, everybody on the award. It's awesome. All right. Next up is we have a presentation by Rob Whitner regarding relationships between tribes, state, and the federal government, and I will let Commissioner Lawson introduce him.
Thank you. So based on the comments that were given at last meeting, both in person and online, the overwhelming majority of the comments received were about a sort of perceived imbalance between the relationship of tribes and other gaming facilities in the state. And what that showed me is that we haven't done a very good job of educating the public as to how the relationship works between tribes and states and the limitations that are placed on that relationship by the federal government. I know that this is training that we as commissioners receive. This is training that commission staff receive, and the members of the legislature also receive annual training in this as well. So I asked Ron Whitner, who is an affiliate professor at University of Washington Law School, to come and give a presentation today about the tribal state federal relationship to level set with everyone here in the group. Ron Whitner is affiliate professor of law at the University of Washington Law School. He's also co-owner of the Whitner Group and provides tribal court and justice system development services for tribes. He worked as in-house counsel for the Squaxin Island tribe before returning to the University of Washington to teach. While he was at the University of Washington, he formed the Tribal Court Public Defense Clinic, after which he was appointed the chief judge for the Tulalip Tribes Tribal Court, and over which he presided over the Healing to Wellness Court. He continues to serve as a pro tem appellate judge for various tribal courts in the Pacific Northwest. He graduated from the Evergreen State College and the University of Washington School of Law, and should be available online now. Ron, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I am. Or yes, we can hear you. How do we get his presentation on the screen?
Look at that.
There it is.
Thank you.
All right, Ron, would you like to take it away?
Sure. So thank you for asking me to give this presentation. I'm going to attempt to give a little bit of a presentation in about 15 or 20 minutes on a few topics that we would normally spend, a week on in the federal Indian law class. But it gives you it'll give you an overview of the foundations of tribal sovereignty as defined by the United States, and the relationship between tribes and the states and why it's structured the way it is. As Commissioner Lawson mentioned, this isn't taught as much in school, so a lot of people don't know it, including people from tribes and tribal citizens don't know exactly why the tribes are still considered sovereign by the United States, why we're different than the Aboriginal and indigenous groups in other countries, and sort of what the legal foundation is that creates the way we sit in the United States legal structure. So I'm going to talk about the foundational cases that not just for Indian law, but really affects everybody in the United States. It affects title. It was the way title was cleared. I'm not going to go too far, hopefully, into the weeds, which I tend to do. But we'll go through this, and this should hopefully give a little bit of a foundation on these pretty old doctrines here in the United States. So if we could go to the next slide. So to understand where tribes sit in our structure, you have to understand a little bit of history. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, one of the issues that was brought up with the Crown before the American Revolution was that the Crown kept all relations with the tribes to itself. It didn't allow the colonies to enter into negotiations with tribes over land cessions. The Crown would enter into the treaties with the tribal groups. The tribal groups would cede land. That land would then be opened up for settlement by the Crown and managed by the colonies, wherever those lands were within the colonies. And the reason why the Crown did that was because the colonies were very competitive with each other. And even then, having them being able to buy land and expand was something that the British monarchy was concerned with. And I think probably it turns out to be legitimately concerned with, because after the American Revolution and then the newly formed states had to deal with the same exact issue, we decided to do exactly the same thing that England did. So rather than having individual states have the ability to interact and negotiate with the tribes within the borders of the state, we reserved in the Constitution that role for Congress. And that's through what we call the Indian Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, that Congress has the power to regulate commerce with the foreign nations and among the states and with the Indian tribes. And so Congress made this decision, and it was a controversial decision. It was something that they really, spent a lot of time thinking about. We don't really learn about it. It's not something that's discussed much in history classes, but this was a really important issue because the states, just like the colonies, did not get along. There were very strong divisions, which eventually led to the Civil War. And everybody sort of decided to consolidate these relationships with Congress. And so Congress has the sole ability to regulate and engage with the tribes. So that's the first important thing to understand as to why that was embedded into our Constitution. Can we go to the next slide? So then we come up with the three big cases that anybody, if you take federal Indian law, if you take property law, you're going to hear about these cases. You see them, and especially the first one. The first one has the most important broad impact to the United States. We call them the Marshall Trilogy because all three were authored by Chief Justice John Marshall, the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He wrote all three of these decisions, within the years of 1823 and 1832, and they form really the foundation of how the United States looked at tribes, what responsibilities the United States has towards tribes, and what the position of the states are with regard to the tribes. So let's talk about the first one, Johnson v. McIntosh. Next slide. So Johnson v. McIntosh is actually an extremely important case. So the issue is, so let's talk about the issue of the case. The case had two people who were in competition over the same piece of land. One person had bought it pursuant to the Crown system of entering into treaties and then selling it. The other person bought it directly from the Indian owner. So they claimed the same piece of land. The person who bought it from the Indian owner said, look, all of our private property rights are vested in this ideal that private property can be alienated by the owner. An owner owns property. If they own property, one of the rights that is one of the strongest rights under both British law and American law is that that private property owner can sell their property if they want to whoever they want, mostly. So why can't I go and purchase it from the person, the Indian, that owned it? And this was important because most of the lands in the United States were not done this way. And there was and if that position was the position that was taken by the United States Supreme Court, it would cast a cloud over all title in the United States at that time. And so this was a really important case that Marshall had to struggle with to come up with, well, why do we treat Indians differently than we treat sort of other owners, other property owners under our law? And he went back into international law, and it was the international law of colonization. It was really the law that came out of the Catholic Church during colonization of Africa, during colonization of the New World. And the church had built a lot of case law, basically, and arguments why it could grant monopolies to Christian countries to be able to go colonize lands that were possessed by non-Christian people. And so what Chief Justice Marshall created was what we call we can now call the discovery doctrine, but essentially an international standard that when a Christian country discovers lands held by non-Christian people, under this doctrine of international law, title to that land magically transfers to the discovering Christian country. The Aboriginal people still retain the ability to use it and to occupy it, but the other bundle of sticks, which is the metaphor that we use in law for when you own a piece of property, you have this bundle of sticks of rights. The tribes lose a bunch of those sticks. The only ones that they keep are the right to continue to use it and occupy it until that right is extinguished by the discovering country through either a treaty or through a just war. Usually based on if the non-Christian people don't allow Christianity to be introduced, then you can make war on them. So he went back into these essentially legal decisions by the Catholic Church, and that became the law of the United States. So essentially, the person that bought the property from the Indian owner couldn't do that because the Indian owner had lost that piece, that stick in its bundle. Only the United States now could engage in these relationships and take land from tribes and then sell those lands to individuals. Now, it was a double-edged sword, though, because as Johnson v. McIntosh Marshall said, was in exchange for this huge right of a Christian country being able to essentially take title to lands away from people who held them, it also created a duty so that a country that did that has to take essentially under its wing these tribal sovereigns to civilize them, because that was the deal. They got civilization, the Christian country got the land. So if you did this, if you took this title away, then you also took on this responsibility for these people. And that has become known as the trust doctrine that the United States federal government has to tribes in the United States. And that continues. The third important thing about Johnson v. McIntosh is he also asserted and said, and tribes are sovereign entities. They're essentially a sovereign. We enter into treaties with them. The Great Britain entered into treaties with them. We continued that process. In order for this to work, those tribal governments have to be recognized as sovereign so that they can cede this large blocks of land to the United States. And so we recognize that they continue to have sovereignty. Their sovereignty hasn't been extinguished. Next slide. So that's the rules of Johnson v. McIntosh. Tribes continue to be sovereign. They can enter, we don't do treaties anymore in the United States, but they have the ability to enter into treaties. Because of the Indian Commerce Clause, only Congress or who Congress delegates to may engage in commerce with tribes. That's why states do have some authorities over the reservations, but it's because you can point back to some sort of statute where Congress has delegated to a state authority over tribal reservations and Indians. Without that, then you won't. Then it still sits with Congress. Tribes can't alienate our title to our lands to anybody but the United States. And in exchange for all of that, the United States took on a trust responsibility to the tribes that they took this title from through the Discovery Doctrine. All right, so that's Johnson. Again, as you can see, this lays the framework for all of like title in the United States. So for instance, if you look at like the Louisiana Purchase, when the United States purchased lands from France, from the United States point of view, what they were purchasing was the Discovery Doctrine rights of France. France discovered these lands. They were held by non-Christians. Those title flowed to France. France became the only country that could extinguish title, Aboriginal title, and then the United States bought that right from France to be able to then extinguish title of the tribes in that area France discovered and claimed. So that's the legal framework for expansion west. That's why so many treaties were made to cede land from the tribes, so you could clear title and open those for settlement. And if a tribe refused to negotiate, then it triggered a, quote, just war, and the United States could then go in and take it. Later, the United States can take things now through statute, through Congress. Let's go on to the second case. Next slide. So Cherokee Nation v. Georgia, about 10 years later, the Cherokee Nation reservation was located, this is a map of the Cherokee reservation of the time. It was located within the state of Georgia. It was a very large reservation. Georgia wanted it desperately. They looked at it, they wanted to open it for settlement, and they decided at some point that, you know what, we're just going to do that, regardless of what the United States says or the Constitution says. We're going to go ahead and annex it. And so they started passing legislation to essentially annex the entire Cherokee reservation. They passed state laws banning any white person from being on the reservation without a permit from the state. They seized all of the towns, the farms, the mines, all of the economic activity that the Cherokee Nation was doing. They began surveying it to prepare it to sell, and the Cherokee Nation wanted to sue them to stop them. And to sue them, they had to go into federal court. But at that time, we didn't have the huge structure and the statutory framework that we have, and so you had to find jurisdiction under the Constitution for the lawsuit to occur in the United States Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court had jurisdiction only over certain things. Cherokee Nation said, look, Johnson v. McIntosh, you said we were sovereigns, so we're a nation. The United States Supreme Court, or the United States Constitution, says that the Supreme Court has jurisdiction to hear cases between foreign nations and states. So we're not the United States and we're not the state, so we must be a foreign nation. So we should be able to sue the state of Georgia in the Supreme Court. Johnson, Chief Justice Marshall wasn't willing to go that far. So let's go to the next slide. So what he said was, well, tribes, you're not foreign nations the way it's defined in the Constitution. You're something different. And he came up with this term, the domestic dependent nations. He said, look, through the Discovery Doctrine, the United States took title to your land. It also took that responsibility to take care of you. That made you dependent on the United States federal government. And so the United States federal government essentially has exclusive authority over you, and you're not able to negotiate with, for instance, you know, a Cherokee Nation. You can't go negotiate with France as an equal sovereign. You're not an equal sovereign. You're a domestic dependent sovereign. But because you're a domestic dependent sovereign and not a foreign nation, I don't have jurisdiction to hear the case. So I can't hear this lawsuit because you're not a foreign nation. Case is closed. And there's a lot more in Cherokee Nation than that. He did a lot of sort of foreshadowing on what he thought should be, but essentially that's what it boiled down to. I don't have jurisdiction to hear this case because you're not a foreign nation. You're this other kind of sovereign. Next slide. And so the rules of Cherokee Nation, again, we're sovereign, but we're not, the tribes aren't foreign nations. They're domestic dependent sovereigns, and the United States can't hear cases between a tribe and a state because they're not foreign nations. So let's go to the next slide. Which brings us to the last case in the Marshall trilogy, Worcester v. Georgia. This is a picture of Samuel Worcester. He was a missionary. He had been working on the Cherokee Reservation for a long time. He was a citizen of the United States. Remember, at that time, Indians were not allowed to be citizens of the United States. If they had been citizens, then an individual Indian could have sued the state of Georgia, and the Supreme Court would have jurisdiction. Because none of the Cherokee Nation members were U.S. citizens, they wouldn't fit under the Constitution. But Samuel Worcester, as a citizen of the United States, could. So he refused to leave the reservation in violation of the state laws passed by Georgia. He then was imprisoned by the state of Georgia. He filed a habeas corpus petition with the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, Chief Justice Marshall says, hey, there we go. You have a lawsuit now between a United States citizen and a state that I have jurisdiction over, so now I can reach the merits of this case. And what he said was, the Indian Commerce Clause was clear. The purpose of it was clear. We vested authority over tribes and reservations in Congress in the United States Constitution. It doesn't say anything about states. The states have no authority over the reservations unless Congress gives it to them. And we haven't given any authority to Georgia to do this. And so Georgia, you don't have the ability to annex the Cherokee Reservation. Only Congress can do that. Next slide. So the rules out of Worcester, the Indian Commerce Clause reserves that authority entirely to Congress, and states have no jurisdiction over Indian reservations or Indians on reservations unless Congress allows. So that is the third tenet of the Marshall trilogy, the third big block of rules. And so this continues to today. So when you look at tribes, all tribes in the United States, when they're federally recognized, the reservations are these little federal enclaves, essentially. They're similar to like a national park or a military reservation, to where the United States federal government has exclusive authority under the Constitution to be able to regulate them and do anything they want to them. So for instance, with Cherokee Nation, if we do remember our history books, we remember what happened after Worcester. Worcester v. Georgia looked like a win for Cherokee Nation, but it was a Pyrrhic victory because Andrew Jackson, who was president at the time, said, well, if the United States Congress has all this authority, then we can do it. And the Congress did. So the Congress not only terminated the Cherokee Reservation, it extinguished all of the reservations on the entire East Coast and moved all of the Indians, what became known as the Trail of Tears, to the Indian Territory, predominantly in Oklahoma, a little bit in Wisconsin and Missouri, but they force marched them across the mountains and into this new territory and extinguished and opened all of those reservations on the East Coast for settlement, which shows you that the power of Congress has. Congress has the power to terminate our sovereignty. The Congress has terminated the sovereignty of over 100 tribes in this country. Many of them have been able to be re-recognized as sovereign, but it's clear under the law that the United States can do that if it wants to. And so tribes are at the mercy of the Congress, but states are excluded from that unless Congress gives that to the states. And we see that through many areas, like Public Law 280 here in Washington State. The state has significant jurisdiction, criminal jurisdiction, and some civil adjudicatory jurisdiction over reservations because of the Public Law 280 statute that was passed by the Congress. The Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, that was a delegation of limited authority to the state. To the states in the area of gaming, because after the Cabazon decision, essentially gaming, the tribes were completely unregulated. There was no federal regulation over tribal gaming. And so the United States created this big regulatory framework that not only created the National Indian Gaming Commission and the federal regulations of tribes and tribal gaming, but also delegated limited authority to the states to be able to engage in compacts and requires compacts and set tiers of gaming with different authorities where the tribe can do some without any agreement by the state. Other types of gaming, the tribe has to have some agreement by the state. And so the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act is a classic example of a delegation of limited authority to the state, but it's not full authority. Very few of them are. They're always limited in some way. So states now in 2025 have a lot of interests on the reservation and the ability to do things on the reservation that they didn't do back in 1832. But those tenets of those three cases still stand. The state, without that specific authority by Congress, has no authority on the reservation over the tribe, the tribal lands, or tribal citizens that reside on those. And then the last thing is to go to the next slide to see how that was incorporated into the state constitution. Let's go ahead to the next slide and read Article 26. So this is such a powerful doctrine, this ideal, the Indian Commerce Clause is so powerful that when states come into the Union, you had the state, excuse me, the Washington Territory had to enter into a compact with the United States and put in our state constitution essentially a forever disclaimer that we will abide, the state of Washington will abide by the Indian Commerce Clause. Okay? The following ordinance shall be irrevocable without the consent of the United States and the people of the state, that the people inhabiting the state do agree and declare that they forever disclaim all right and title to lands owned or held by any Indian or Indian tribes, and until that title is extinguished, the same shall be and remain subject to the disposition of the United States, and the land shall remain under the absolute control of Congress of the United States. This was a requirement for states with tribes in them to agree to before you could even become a state. That's how strong this continues to be. I think I've exceeded my time probably. I didn't go down too many rabbit holes, but this is just the barest foundation of where tribes are, why we are continuing to be sovereign, and why the state has very limited authority on the reservations, and when it does, it's under some sort of system created by the Congress, like the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. So I want to just quickly tie this all back to gaming. Ron talked about it in his presentation a little bit, but when we follow this core principle of states not having jurisdiction over tribes and reservation lands, and then also the state constitution, Article 24?
6, I
I'm
think.
not 26. My Roman numerals are a little rusty. That also disclaims jurisdiction over tribes and over reservation lands. You know, the only authority that the state has, and thus the only authority that the commission has, is what may have been granted by Congress, which Congress did in the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. And if you look at its Title 25 of the United States Code, Section 2710 D3C, it outlines what tribes and states can compact for in those gaming compacts that allow for Class 3 gaming on the reservation. And it's expressly limited to, so Congress has given the state some authority to regulate gaming, but it's limited in the statute to the application of state laws regarding licensing and regulation of that gaming activity, the enforcement of state laws regarding licensing and regulation, money to the state for costs related to licensing and enforcement, and then other subjects that are directly related to the operation of gaming activities. And there's also regulations that are in 25 CFR Part 293 that also kind of give a little bit more guidance about what the state can and cannot do when it comes to the regulation of gaming on the reservation. But it all comes back to states don't have any authority unless Congress has given it. Congress has given it in this very limited instance, but we are also thus limited by what Congress has said. And so with that, I will turn my time back over to the chair.
Thank you, and thank you for being with us this morning. Any other commissioners have any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. And Commissioner Lawson, Professor, thank you so much for bringing this very thoughtful conversation here. So just to summarize for those of us who are not attorneys, just for clarity's sake, because I've had my fair share of communication with the public and other stakeholders about this. So just a very executive level summary of this. It's really apples and oranges between tribal, non-tribal gaming. The relationship between the commission and I'm just clarifying this, and please correct me if I'm stating it incorrectly. Basically, the relationship between the Gambling Commission and non-tribal entities, be it house banked card rooms, pull tabs, a church bingo past a certain limit, for example, that is the relationship between a state agency and regulated entities. Whereas the relationship between the commission and, say, an Indian casino is the relationship between a state and a quasi-sovereign entity within a very narrow federal law framework. Is that how you'd summarize that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And somewhat off topic pertaining to the last issue, but this was something that came up in other conversations, so I figure I might as well address it. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what our limitations are within those compacts? So, for example, one of the questions that I had offline with the stakeholder was relating to the wager limit conversation earlier, where the perception, kind of in that same vein of perceived inequity between tribal and non-tribal gaming, like why are you giving them this amount? Why can't we have it, basically? And there are all sorts of limitations. Like, we can't just have a take backseat in terms of something that we've agreed to with some tribes and not for others, right? Like, there can't necessarily be that level of inconsistency. Can you elaborate a little bit more on just what principles we have to abide by when we compact?
Yeah, so it's really just outlined in the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. Again, 25 USC 2710 D3C, which is the application of state licensing and regulation laws to Indian Class 3 gaming. The enforcement of state licensing and regulation laws on Class 3 gaming, reimbursement to the state for costs for the regulating and licensing that activity or enforcing state laws for those activities, and then other subjects that are directly related to the operation of gaming. It's outlined in the statute. So that is the very limited authority that Congress has given us. And given the application of state law in Indian country with regard to Indian gaming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. It looks like Senator Conway has a question. Oh, okay. Senator Conway, good morning. We can't hear you if you're talking.
Still got himself on mute.
Looks like you're on mute. Hey there, Senator. He's having some trouble. All right, I'm not sure what's going on. There we go, maybe. You took your hand down, so. All right, sorry about that, Senator. I don't know what's going on. Maybe if someone could reach out, make sure everything's working for him, that would be great. Any other questions, comments? All right. Oh, who's that?
Looks like it's Eric Pearson.
Okay. Yeah.
If there's no action, do we have to take public comment?
No.
Okay.
No, I was just asking for questions from the commissioners or the senators. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. So we'll be taking public comment at the end, but there's no final action done here, so we're not taking public comment or comments for Mr. Whitner at this time. So we will move to tab 3, which is the 2024 Strategic Intelligence Report with Bryce Mack, Special Agent Supervisor of the Intelligence Unit, and Bill Spring, the Special Agent of the Intelligence Unit. Good morning to you both. You can go ahead and start when you're ready.
All right, good morning, commissioners, ex officio, staff, and others. I'm Bryce Mack, Special Agent Supervisor in our Intelligence Unit. I'm joined today by Bill Spring. Today, Bill and I are going to present our 2024 Strategic Intel Review. We do this each year to provide some statistics on the good work the Gambling Commission does that protects the public and ensures gambling is legal and honest. The way we've got it structured is we're going to start off with some agency-wide stats. Then we're going to dive into some crime-specific statistics. Then we'll talk about some of our cooperative efforts and some trends that we've seen. And lastly, we're going to conclude with some conclusions and recommendations. With that said, we'll just go ahead and jump right into the stats, and I'll turn it over to Bill, and he'll run you through them. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Special Agent Bill Spring, and I'm going to be going over, I'm an analyst with the Gambling Commission, and I'll be going through the analytical strategic stats itself. So the first slide right here, this slide illustrates the increase in total cases for the last 5 years, including the rise in administrative cases. But if you notice in the criminal cases, you can see a decrease. This is a slight decrease over the years. This has nothing to do with criminal cases of crimes not being committed. This just happens to be that criminal cases in the investigation department, what we see itself is that these house bank and where all these we do our investigation are doing their part and doing their portion of actually disrupting criminal activity within their establishments, which is perfect. Administrative cases increase because this involves getting out and doing more inspections and getting out there and consist of public service community to the individuals, house banks, society, and working with tribal communities itself. So you will constantly see an increase every year in administrative. What we want to see is that criminal case decrease overall each year. All right, next slides we're looking at too. So the top slide itself, this is our 3 categories when we put our cases into our system. We look at inspection reviews. Those are mostly administrative cases itself. We have investigation agent initiated and investigation complaints. So complaints are coming through our complaint hotline, coming through direct complaints to agents itself, which initiates cases for those, or agency initiated. It means that we agents have took the initiative to move forward on a criminal case or onto administrative case itself to open up. Something has led to another aspect of a criminal or administrative case to open. You can see that once again, and like I said, administrative cases will continue to increase over the years. You can see from 2023 to 2024, the increased inspection review. That means we're getting more businesses, house bank card rooms. We're increasing our inspections with the tribal communities and continue doing our work. Agents are working hard and diligent out there. When you come to the 2024 licensed, unlicensed case count, that's our bottom slide or bottom graph itself. This just illustrates for you to see where we're looking at our cases that are occurring. Now, this could be a case that involves an establishment that has a license or an individual that has a license with the Gambling Commission, compared to unlicensed authorities, which consist of an illegal raffle or portion of some off entity that does not have a license that we look into. This can include also internet gambling or any crimes online that does not affiliate with the Washington State Gambling Commission. Let's see here. All right, so on this one, this is our dispositions. This one I wanted to illustrate to you. You can see for the last 2 years where we're looking at our final dispositions when we close our cases. What is our outcome looking at? Our agents come to a conclusion with the supervisors and when we do our final outcome. You can see that from 2023 to 2024, verbal warnings has increased with close to 200 overall. That's just getting out there and giving them the warning and making sure they're well known and what's going on with their first warning. The results of having a second violation after that are very slim. Usually that first warning from the agents itself usually eliminates any additional criminal activity afterwards, but can't say that it fully eliminates, but at least it eliminates most of the objective. Looking at inspections without violations is another increase. All right, this is involved with our administrative inspection reviews. There's no violation involved with it. It just continues. But overall, you can see that throughout the years, the criminal aspect of cases, criminal charges, they're all pretty much stays similar from each year, with no major addition or major hiccups or increases. All right, top cities from 2024. Main thing was in 2023, when we listed the top 25 cities, Tukwila was #1 overall. But this year, Tacoma took over the top. These are cases that amount, so total cases. So in 2024, Tacoma had 80 total cases that was administrated into the system that we investigated into. But usually you see Tukwila, Renton, those are your hot spot areas around that King County area. But for Tacoma to Tyka, that was a big change for us. We should possibly see that going down next year, but we'll see what the end of the year looks like. All right, this is a heat map. We wanted to show you the counties itself. You can see where the hottest spots are. Those are really the dark red areas. Snohomish, King County, Pierce County, Thurston, all right, and Clark County. So you look at that I-5 corridor, go in the major city areas. That's where your majority of your criminal or administrative or criminal actions are happening that we had to open cases on. One of the big jump also was out in Yakima from last year to this year. Yakima increased. They went from orange to a light red this year, so we started seeing more activity happening in that county itself. This case right here, so this is looking at, I wanted to break down our top 10 criminal, and then there'll be a next slide, we'll talk about our administrative cases, but you can see our top 10 criminal cases that we investigated last year was for illegal raffles. Majority of these were raffles that we were complaints, or we were able to identify through intelligence, through social media aspects. These are being posted online or were informed to us of just local businesses holding a raffle within their area without having to go through the process of actually doing their the diligency of finding out if they can hold a raffle or not. So most of these were all verbal warnings resulting of the dispositions itself, and then theft right underneath it. These were considered we considered our theft to be combined with bet pinching, bet capping, any of those card thefts. Those are the thefts that we look into. Cheating the same way. We combined subcategories together to meet into cheating, counterfeit. Those four right there have been on a consistent each year as being the top 4 criminal cases that we were starting to see. And then when we look at case locations, you can see majority of the time that our criminal cases that we're getting from house bank card rooms, that they're being diligent and catching these things happening within their establishments and getting our agents involved. We can see that's where majority of our time that our agents are really focused on is making for criminal actions happening there. All right, so for administrative, top things our agents do are out there doing inspections and evaluations. So those are always going to be our top 10, our top 2 things. But once they do their inspection and evaluations, then they come into the fact that there might be operational violations within that inspection that they notice. So that becomes into when they start doing their administrative cases, those things open up. Same thing with self-exclusion. That tends to be in tribal complaints. Those 5 right there will always be our top 5 administrative cases that we open up on. Doesn't mean that they're all negative in portion, but they are what our agents do focus solely on when it comes to administrative actions. And then once you could see for administrative stuff, we have more when we're looking between house, bank, food, drink established, and tribal, which are main licensee establishments itself. You can see where our inspections are more, where the tribal agents will have more inspections than the regulatory agents in certain areas. So they're going to have more cases. So it doesn't mean that there's more issues or anything. These are all normal costs down to where their locations are at. All right, license applications. Want to highlight this so you can see that from 23 to 24, the increase in, the decrease from licensee applications from 23 to 24. Now, from tribal to individual, you can see that there's been drop with the new licensee coming up here in June, where the new establishments for licenses, we should see the actual increase. Hopefully in 2025, it should be changed again. So this really predicts, if you looked at 2022, the year, the numbers were a decrease, and then 23 they jumped up, and just the years that they needed licensed out. And this we wanted to really highlight was the top agency complaints that we receive. So this is through the agency website itself. So number 1 we have is tribal complaints. Now, when we talk about tribal complaints, it can come down to a simple thing as this casino is not allowing to do something, or not allowing me to have a drink or something like that. It could be anywhere that involves anything with the tribal casinos. They put a complaint in and it goes through just in the systems itself. So it hits all the tribals and it's all combined into one complaint system. All right, now when it comes to operational violations, these are complaints against both house, bank, card rooms, and bar establishments. They can be in operational violations. Same thing with self-exclusion. But you can see where our solely focused when we get our complaints in were the highlighted areas. These top 3 tribal complaints, operational violations, self-exclusions, will all continues to be our top 3 of everything that we receive. Everything after that is what we see gradual increase or decrease throughout the years. So when we look at criminal activity, if there is any action or what our other agents are looking at, the sole focus is going to be at the bottom area and see where those increase and decrease, where we can make a major effect in.
Okay, this next slide focuses on our self-exclusion program. So for those of you that don't know, gambling self-exclusion program, it's a voluntary process that allows individuals to ban themselves from gambling venues in an effort to help manage and overcome gambling addiction. So as you can see from this graph, we started it in 2022, partway through the year. During the first full year in 23 is where we had the big spike, 445 cases. A lot of people showing up self-excluding. It did drop quite a bit here in 2024. The other thing to note is in 2024, we did have 122 self-exclusion cases. And in those cases, Sometimes money is confiscated, and the total amount for 24 was over 20,000 confiscated, and those funds were actually turned over to the healthcare authority. All right, our next slide, this is for our intelligence unit. The first graph here shows the requests we get from our own special agents. We assist them with their casework. So some examples of this might be to find out where someone's located, to try and find maybe a phone number, or pulling their criminal history. So as you can see, over the last 3 years, we completed almost 500 requests. One thing to keep in mind is that's just with 2 special agent analysts. So that's just Bill and our other special agent doing over 500 requests over the last few years. So there's a lot of great work that they're doing. The next graph, that shows the number of bulletins we distributed. So these bulletins, they're informational reports we send out on topics like officer safety alerts, or to let stakeholders know to be aware of a particular matter, such as fraudulent activities. As you can see, we had over 400 of those that went out the last 3 years, and they have progressively increased. Graph 3 there, that's the last graph on the right. This is one of the measures that we pride ourselves on, and that's assisting outside law enforcement. So some of the examples would be responding to requests from outside law enforcement for player tracking, possibly video surveillance, or trying to identify somebody for law enforcement, to identify a person or a vehicle. And as you can see, that number has very steadily ticked up, and we hope to continue that trend into 2025. This next slide just highlights the trend and the continuation of the violent crime that continues in 2024. In 23, there was also a lot of this type of crime, and just kind of showing that the crime is continuing. We created a timeline here that captures some of the more significant crimes. And as you can see here, there were instances of follow home robberies, which we had in prior years, attempted burglaries, fights, shootings. So the violent crime continues. We don't see the trend getting necessarily better. At best, we believe it will just stay constant. So one of the things we have been very focused on are partnerships that we have created. We're always looking to create additional partnerships. The partnerships, they foster the sharing of the information, and that sharing of information, it then translates into speeding up investigations. It translates into promoting public safety. And then within the partnerships, it promotes kind of that trust amongst each other. So in 2024, we did have a lot of good cooperative success stories with our tribal law enforcement and licensee partners. Just a couple examples to share with you anecdotally. One instance, our unit put together a bulletin trying to identify subjects who were committing fraud at one of our house bank card rooms. We put out a bulletin, and one of our tribal partners responded and recognized the individual because they had some similar issues going on at their casino. And so ultimately that information sharing led us to ID those folks and pass the information along to the local law enforcement that was working the case. We've also had several assists, like I kind of talked about before, with local law enforcement. They get a hold of us, they provide us with a picture of a suspect or a particular vehicle that they need help trying to identify. We're able to then turn that around, send it out to our partners. And we've had several instances where they're able to get a positive identification, and then we can relay that information back over to the law enforcement detective so that they can then complete and finish their investigation. So just wanted to highlight there's a lot of good cooperation going on, and we hope to just continue and grow that trend moving forward. This slide focuses on a trend that we've seen over the last couple years, and it's pull tab fraud. So we have seen the rise of this counterfeit pull tabs. They're very prevalent in the Thurston, Pierce, King, Snow County areas. We did see it in 23, and it carries right on into 24. And what this entails is a suspect will take an already open pull tab that's typically not worth anything, and then they superimpose the winning symbol from the game flare onto this already opened pull tab. And we believe they're probably likely printing it themselves, at home or at a business or something of that nature. Then the suspect goes back to the licensee and they try and redeem it for a large prize that matches up with the game flare. And if the bartender is busy and isn't paying attention and doesn't check, there's something called the secondary win code that should match the original game. And if they don't check that, there is a chance that they could, have a payout and that person would get away with fraud. So we have seen this trend. We have put out information bulletins on this. We've done a couple of public service announcements for stakeholders. And so I think getting that awareness out is now making the stakeholders very aware of what's going on. And hopefully we can stamp that out. Was there a question?
Chris, please continue at this point.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. Okay, another trend we've seen is cyber attacks. We had two in 2024, March 6th and April 5th. They did target our Washington State casinos, tribal facilities. The first facility, because of the attack, closed for 2 days. Patrons were unable to access ATMs and other money services. The second closed down that casino for 3 weeks to do the investigation. So this trend, it's not unique to Washington. It's occurred in other states, Nevada, Illinois, to name a couple. It's likely only to get worse based on just cyber attack projections. It's probably only going to escalate. So it's something that we are very mindful of and are monitoring. And then that brings us to our final slide, our conclusions and recommendations. So what we've noticed is King County, the I-5 corridor, they're still obviously the epicenter for the violent crime and overall cases, but we have noticed some spread to Yakima County and Clark County. We have seen an uptick there. As mentioned, we've seen an uptick in fraudulent pull tabs, and we have seen cyber attacks on the rise. Now, recommendations. We're trying to get more education and awareness out to stakeholders regarding these counterfeit pull tabs. And one of the things that our unit, we talked about partnerships, obviously with the proliferation of gambling becoming legalized in other states, with regard to sports wagering and iGaming, we are very focused on creating more partnerships with outside entities like other states. And just that we feel like that will help us be very proactive and stay informed of the different trends that they are seeing so that we can stay ahead of the curve. With that, that's what we have prepared for you today. We're happy to take any questions and we appreciate your time.
Perfect, thank you. Do any of the commissioners or ex officios have any questions? I have one question. In the top 10 criminal case types, one of them is listed as professional gambling. What's meant by that? Or what kind of case would that be?
So when we're looking at professional gambling, we're looking at it eliminates to, let's say you're looking at sports betting, online sports betting. an online sports betting site can be considered professional gambling because of how much transactions are going through it itself. But also professional gambling can be considered to an individual that is continuing getting over the normal amount of what a normal gambler would see. Bryce, do you want to help on that portion on an individual? I'm really focused myself, as an analyst, onto the online portion of that criminal action of it.
Yeah, when we pull statistics, so we're pulling from our case reporting system. So a lot of it is what an agent necessarily will enter as their type of case. So professional gambling is going to encompass a lot of different things. It could be, some kind of a bar tavern that's operating an illegal type of game, or possibly a gambling machine. That would all qualify under professional gambling, and so the agent may categorize that as a professional gambling type of case. So it covers a number of different things.
Great, thank you. And then one more question. You say Yakima is on the rise. Have more card rooms opened there, or is it just the same ones that is just getting worse?
Yeah, we've seen, specific, there's some house bank card rooms that have had some elevated activity over there that we've noticed, that's been on the rise. So, and Yakima, it's a pretty, it's a fairly populated area, and there's some things going on there. So it's not so much that it's a big surprise, but, it's just noted that that's an area, when we talk about and think about deploying resources, that we might need to focus on a little bit more.
Got it. Thank you. And Senator Conway, it looks like you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
No worries. Sorry about that.
I apologize the last time around, but somehow I was being treated as a guest, not a participant here. But my question is on youth and whether or not there's been any uptick in youth being engaged in gambling, and whether your facility is working on that. I know sports betting, of course, probably is very attractive to all youth, and I'm curious about whether or not your commission is looking into that potential for, and whether there has been evidence of that.
I'll speak to the fact that we do have different checks that we've done in the past, and probably will in the future. If you're talking about, people that are underage that are trying to enter facilities.
Savannah Van Leuven Smith or Savannah.
So we do have some proactive measures that we will do as far as conducting those type of proactive compliance type of inspections, to make sure that those licensees are doing their job to prevent the underage contingency from entering those facilities and participating.
I know that, there's such a huge ability on the internet side to make yourself feel like you're in a different state that has different rules in terms of sports betting. I'm just curious how we are enforcing that. I mean, we were made aware of it when we were doing other kinds of sports betting venues, but anyway, thank you. To me, it's the internet. It's the internet and access to the internet and ability to use the internet and the ability to make yourself feel like you're in another state when you're betting. It just seems like there's an awful lot of potential there for abuse. But
yeah, and I can speak to the internet. We have done tests in the past where we've actually used a VPN to try and relocate ourselves, to test to make sure that certain geofences are accurate. We have done those tests, and we do currently have, I can't speak to them because they're active investigations, but we are actively looking into illegal online gambling and taking appropriate action.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from any commissioners, ex officios? All right, and again, we're not taking public comment, so we're not taking final action on this matter. All public comment will be at the end. So let's go ahead though and take a 10-minute break, and we will come back at 10:52. Meeting again, please, thank you. It is 10:54 a.m. Sorry, we went a little late there. We are at TAM 4, which is the 2025 legislative wrap-up, preparing for the 2026 legislative session with Tricia. Good morning.
Good morning, Tricia Gullion, Legislative and Rules Manager. I'm happy to announce that the 2025 legislative session has adjourned. It adjourned on Sunday, April 27th. And following the last commission meeting, our agency request legislation, House Bill 1222, was signed into law by the governor. This legislation, which will exempt the proprietary security and financial information of our tribal partners and licensees, will go into effect in July. Additionally, on the last day of session, lawmakers passed the final version of the 2025-27 operating budget. As we discussed earlier this year, some of the proposals included a sweep of our funds from the agency to the general fund. Unfortunately, the final version did include a sweep of $2.2 million from the gambling revolving account and moving it into the general fund. We are currently working with the governor's staff and staff of the Office of Financial Management to determine the impacts of this sweep to our agency. This bill is now on the governor's desk, and he has until the 17th of this month to make any changes and to sign it into law. If there are any changes that do occur regarding our agency, we will keep you updated. Moving into 2026, staff has two ideas for potential bills for the next legislative session. The first one looks to address the theft of a vulnerable adult statute. There are some potential changes that could occur in that. We are working on draft language for that right now. And the second bill idea would authorize our agency to investigate animal cruelty and animal fighting cases before a gambling nexus is made, and would authorize the investigating agency to determine if any of these cases, if on site at any of these cases, there are roosters on site that have been mutilated and altered for animal fighting, and what next steps need to take place if that determination is made. We currently have some draft language on that potential bill, and we'll be bringing that forward to you at a later date. Are there any proposals from the commissioners which we should consider for the 2026 legislative session?
I have one proposal. So in our meeting last month in discussing the self-exclusion rules, and this has come up in other meetings where we've discussed self-exclusion, the tribes have their own self-exclusion program that sort of exists as a different ecosystem from the state self-exclusion program. And under RCW 9.46.071, tribes can participate in the state's self-exclusion program, but to date, that hasn't really happened. Tribes prefer to continue to run their own self-exclusion programs, and again, they're sort of different ecosystems. We are also limited in the RCW on distribution of the information that we collect under the self-exclusion program. And the RCW says that it cannot be disseminated for any purpose other than the administration of the self-exclusion program. Could we do a targeted and direct amendment to the RCW that would allow us to share our self-exclusion information with a tribe who would then sort of incorporate it in their own self-exclusion program? So for example, if we were talking about our list, could we share it with a tribe? And is there a way that we can do an amendment to the RCW in order to make that happen?
I would be more than happy to take a look at that.
Okay.
Anything else?
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, I am making an update to the agenda. So after public comment and after our executive session, which will be 1 hour, we will be adding a tab 5 to discuss the salary of a public employee before adjournment. All right, so with that, we are now at our public comment period. As I mentioned, we are going to keep all comments to 2 minutes today. And I have a list of some people that signed up. If you didn't get a chance to sign up, you'll still get to provide comment, but I'm going to start with the list here first. So Natalie Easter. And make sure you please come to the podium. We need to keep a good, clear record when we have public comments. So any comments from the background or anywhere else, don't come into that record. And so it's not very helpful at the end of the day. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Madam Chair. How are you today? Awesome to hear. Before I begin, I would like to respectfully ask that the timer be turned off. As a sign of respect toward us in the same way that you deserve the respect in your position you carry. Many of my friends, colleagues, managers, and card room owners, along with union members and non-union members alike, are in this room behind me today, just to be heard. In 1997, Washington State passed legislation to authorize house bank card rooms with a clear goal of creating jobs, generating tax revenue, and fostering state-regulated competition in the gaming industry. This was a deliberate move. A commitment to controlled local economical development, but since 2002, the opposite has occurred. Washington has been dramatically declined in card rooms, over 100 operational rooms to fewer than 40 today. Thousands of living wage jobs have disappeared. Communities that once benefited from the businesses that have critical economical contribution and locally owned small businesses have been pushed to the brink. Meanwhile, tribal casinos have steadily expanded their reach, opening new opportunities, adding table games with limits up to $5,000 now, and lobbying for exclusive rights in sports betting. While these operations thrive, the card rooms that were legally established to provide the same opportunity are being overregulated, outlobbied, and increasingly pushed to the margins of the very industry we have worked to preserve, just to keep our doors open in the hopes that we can build again. If the intent of Washington State gambling laws under RCW 9.46.010 is to keep gambling honest, eliminate the criminal element.
Thank you.
I just have one more line, please.
Sorry, we have to keep strict time. The next up is Jeremiah Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back. My name is Jeremiah Ryan. I work at All Star Lanes Casino, Silverdale, Washington. Since last month's meeting, I've had a lot of time to reflect on Washington State's self-exclusion program. Most of the problems have already been raised, and rather than repeat what everyone else has said, I want to take a different approach. There have been a lot of great points made with reason and logic, and I strongly urge you to listen to all of them, including mine. Number one, accountability and liability. If someone self-excluded a few years ago and relapses at a tribal casino, because the state doesn't offer a real protection, who's accountable? Is the state comfortable with a system that creates legal and moral gray zones but offers no safety net? This opens the door to future scrutiny, litigation, or worse, and by worse I mean public scandal, media exposure, civil rights challenges, or even legislative intervention. The system has consequences, and eventually someone's going to demand answers. 2, structural hypocrisy. It's hard to justify a system that claims moral high ground by restricting access and then allowing full access right across the street. Either you're serious about responsible gambling or you're not. You can't enforce self-exclusion in one venue and ignore it in another and pretend it's not helping. The start of a real solution, scrap the SE program entirely. Maverick has one, tribes have theirs as well. Use the savings to hire licensed psychologists who can actually assess whether addiction is involved. If it's not addiction, that person should be free to return to any place they want to gamble. If it is, then at least they'll be met with real clinical support. Not a permanent ban, not red tape, no shame, just help. And finally, legacy and opportunity. You guys have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something bold and necessary. Gambling will be eventually legalized fully, just like marijuana was. And if we're being honest, let's take a look at it. We legalized cannabis, something that was demonized for decades as dangerous, criminal, and immoral. Yet today it's regulated, taxed,
Sorry,
and
that's your time. Appreciate your comments.
okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, next we have Carter Heel.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Carter. I'm a 27-year-old proud Washingtonian. I was here at the last meeting, and I was here advocating for the fair treatment of house-paying card rooms. Unfortunately, it seems our concerns have fallen on deaf ears within this commission. I must express my concern that potential conflicts of interest may be influencing the actions of Commissioners Ibsen and Charles, calling into question whether personal or political gain is being prioritized over their regulatory responsibilities. Commissioner Ibsen, currently a candidate for Tacoma mayor, has accepted campaign contributions from tribal interest entities that directly compete with house-paying card rooms he is charged with regulating. This raises serious questions about impartiality and fairness. Meanwhile, Commissioner Charles claims to care about the jobs and livelihoods of card room employees, yet consistently votes against every petition aimed at allowing house-paying card rooms to grow, always siding instead with tribal competitors. A recent example highlights this contradiction clearly. During the last meeting, Commissioner Ibsen moved to deny a petition to change the self-exclusion rules for house-paying card rooms. He claimed the change was inconsistent with the intent of the program. However, we all know that individuals of the self-exclusion list are still allowed to gamble at tribal casinos. This inconsistency reveals the current policy disproportionately harms house-paying card rooms while giving a competitive advantage to tribal casinos. Commissioner Charles then promptly seconded the motion, despite the fact that the reasoning behind it was flawed and illogical. If Commissioners Charles and Commissioner Ibsen truly cared about player safety and the well-being of cardroom employees, they would have supported measures like centralized surveillance, something that has been shown repeatedly to improve safety for both patrons and staff. Denying these changes not only defies logic, but actively harms our local businesses, our workers, and our players, all while benefiting competing tribal casinos. The role of the commission is to ensure fair regulation and foster safe environments in all gaming establishments. So why then do Commissioners Ibsen and Charles constantly oppose reforms that would streamline safety and support the cardroom industry? What other explanation is there beyond personal or political interest?
That's your time.
Are they placing tribal contributions above their duty to serve the public? Thank you.
Thank you. You have a problem with our commissioners? Take that to the governor's office via your boss. We will not sit here and allow our commissioners to be disrespected in a meeting.
No disrespect.
Next commenter is Amber Yanez. Apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly. Amber not here. Okay. We will move to Orish online. Okay, Clifford Berlin.
Wow, is he pretty? I know the 2-minute thing is pretty forward, so I'm trying to end this weekend. I know.
Yes, people came forward.
I'm probably gonna get cut off like halfway through, guys, so just let me know the intention was there. All right.
4-hour drive.
Hi, my name is Cliff Berland. I've been in gaming for 23 years in both tribal and card rooms. I'm an enrolled tribal member of a small northern California gaming tribe who served on tribal council with multiple terms. Decent understanding how tribal politics work. I decided to look at the commissioner section, see what kind of credentials you guys bring. And I came across your profile there, Mrs. Lawson, and I quote, Vice Chair Commissioner Lawson is an enrolled member of Iowa tribes in Nebraska. She's an attorney with Schwab, Williamson, and Wyatt. In Seattle, working with tribal governments and entities. Her areas of practice include native law. She's frequently advises companies, more so less. I don't think it takes a law degree to see that there's a definitely conflict of interest, right? Like, yeah, so if you do any work with any branch of tribe or its members, it's impossible to not have a direct connection to it. Your consistent votes always favor the tribal gaming, and your affiliation with Washington State tribes has me questioning your integrity. If you're truly neutral about card systems, about card rooms, then you seem like completely clueless about gaming, or you seriously don't care about card rooms and the 1,000 employees the votes affect. With that being said, I applaud your accolades. I wish you a successful career in working in law with our shared heritage, but I don't think you really have a business sitting up there. It's just too big of a conflict of interest. Thank you.
So Orozco.
Chairman, your time. My testimonial here isn't no political jargon or anything like that. Mine is a personal connection with the card room. Basically, being a first generation, coming from a first generation family, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. Basically, education, anything, financial literacy or anything like that. What the card room and the gaming industry has done for me and my family has made it easier to enact those livable wages that we talk about, being able to support the family, which in turn makes them support their family. My worry is with all the restrictions that you're putting on us is that the next generation of first generation people aren't going to have the same opportunity that me and my family have. And just this industry helps a lot of people who wouldn't have basically the means for any other, the lack of education that's going to get those livable wages. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comment. Ginger Culbertson.
Hi, I'm Ginger. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. We drive from Yakima, which is over 3 hours away each way, to come over here and be able to talk to you about this because it's important to us, because it affects our families and our homes. And sometimes we seem a little bit irate, but we're scared. That's what this is. You see fear and a concern for our jobs. So we've had to close 7 different casinos. Our casinos average 110 employees at each one and their families. So we picture that being ourselves. So then we get scared and it seems as anger. When it's really not meant as anger, it's fear. We're scared for our jobs. In the little town that I live in, Yakima, there were 4 casinos. I've been in the casino industry for over 27 years. Okay, so this is my life. The place that I work at, I've been at for over 22. It's my home. I've watched the people there grow up. So they do matter to me. And whether or not they're able to feed their families, that matters to me. So it's important. That's what we're trying to get across. So the 7 casinos we've closed, but there were 110 if you go back to 2005, and there's only 35 of them left. So it's not just one person or one casino, it's 2/3 of them are gone. So that's a lot of people that don't have a job. And the scary part, like in Yakima, there were 4, there's now 2, that's half. If ours closes, there's only one other place. Well, we have 120 employees. We're not all going to have jobs, right? So then we have to find a different way to replace our income. So that's why we're scared. It's a legitimate reason, and it's not meant negatively, but we're just trying to be able to compete. And the only analogy that I have that's going to sound incredibly stupid probably is that, can I just say one last thing?
Really sorry, I do understand your concerns. I appreciate your comment. Troy Godmay. Morning.
Hello. I want to thank the commissioners for your time and hearing me today. I've been in the casino business for over a decade, and I've seen tribal casinos flourish and non-tribal casinos rooms diminish. This isn't for a lack of trying. It is true some tribal casinos offer self-exclusion programs, but they certainly do not have state-regulated self-exclusion rules. I think it's safe to say that many tribal casinos perhaps adapt or modify their gaming policies to help individuals that might have a gambling problem, and I think that's great. But card rooms do not have that option because of the state requirements. Tribal casinos have no mandate. I think promoting responsible gaming is important for all casinos. However, I believe it should be fair across the board. With well over 20 tribal casinos in Washington state, self-exclusion the way it is now is not effective. And anyone in the business from tribal to non-tribal knows this to be true. When state regulations don't line up with tribal regulations, it is the card rooms that are at a disadvantage and tribal casinos that benefit. A gambler who is denied access to a casino will go to someplace else, and that place is a tribal casino. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Brad Nassett. Correct. Is Brad here?
He stepped out.
Okay. So that's the end of the list. So is there anyone else who would like to make comment that's in the room before I go online? Yes, please come up and state your name for the rest.
Okay. Hello, my name is Nathan. I work for Maverick. I have worked for Muckleshoot Tribal. For the first part of this meeting, you guys said you took away that we just didn't understand your oversight on tribal. I would like to say we do understand that. The main one for me is sports gambling. Was like Senator Conway understands that there's ways to go about sports gambling in Washington State that's illegal. I'm just wondering, I would like to have like a 20-minute slide next meeting on why we don't choose to have on-site sports gambling here. Because the only other ways is going to tribal or going to illegal bookies, which would mean that would probably lead to violent crimes for when they rack up a large amount. But on-site gambling legally, where you would have oversight, would make it to where they have to put the money up front to gamble. And that's the main thing. I would love to see the reasons why you guys don't pass legislation for on-site Washington State sports gambling.
Okay,
that's it.
That's great. I've taken a note of that. I can't guarantee it'll be at the next meeting, but I do think that's a very good topic that we should.
So I believe there's another person's name on the list to make a public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's online, so I was just doing in the room first and then going to online. Is there anyone else in the room? Seeing anyone? Okay. I believe that's Eric Person. My eyes are bad, but you. I believe you're muted.
Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Eric Person, owner of Maverick Gaming. Look, I'm very grateful that even though a business obligation is preventing me from being here today, that so many of our affected team members have come into the room to share their stories, traveled as far away from Yakima to talk to you guys about how they're impacted. And today I want to talk about how the conflicts of interest on this commission are directly resulting in the loss of family wage jobs and critical tax revenue for public services. Commissioner Charles and Ibsen are political appointees who have documented financial and political interests with tribal nations in our state that are business competitors of Maverick Gaming. Their actions are deliberately disadvantaging real jobs and a regulated business like any other in our home state. Yesterday, I filed a formal ethics complaint with the Washington State Attorney General. There's a system in our state for ensuring that public officials are appropriately scrutinized so the public policy is not determined for their private gain. We very well understand that the commission does not directly regulate tribal compacts. Those are negotiated by the governor, but you do absolutely regulate things like bet limits for our card rooms. Both commissioners are in violation of RCW 4236, the Appearance of Fairness Doctrine, and RCW 4252-020, which bars public officials from activities incompatible with their public duties. The public officials are appropriately scrutinized so the public policy is not determined for private gain. I'm going to conclude by just saying, look, guys, I really appreciate you coming. This is just the beginning of this journey. The commissioners will be held accountable for their actions. The governor's office has chosen not to have a confirmation in the legislature this year for these very reasons. It's only through our public noise and by raising these issues will fairness come back to card rooms so that our business can thrive, for our family wage jobs can be protected.
Your time, Mr. Persons. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Are there any other online comments? I see someone with a J, but I can't see a last name. Okay, there's no last name.
Yeah. Hello, this is Jay. I just wanted to
Can you
comment.
please state your full name for the record, please? Thank you.
This is Kyle Cannell. I just wanted to comment about how you guys let
the first guy go over his time when he was talking about the founding funders and Christianity and all this other stuff. And then people drive from Yakima and you won't give them another 30 seconds. These are the citizens who are paying your bills. And then secondly, the sports betting thing, Nate was correct. Right now, there's a lot of underground sports betting in the state of Washington. And that's because of the laws and the regulations you guys have chosen. If you guys legalized it and brought in the house band card rooms, it would take away the illegal sports betting going on. That's all.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, but would you mind stating your name? It kind of cut out at first. I just want to make sure we have it clear there for the public record. Is there anybody else online? All right. So we will now go into executive session at 11:20 a.m. where we will discuss reviewing the performance of the public employee, discussing with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in adverse legal or financial consequences to the agency. Our next Gambling Commission meeting will be held on July 10th and 11th at the Liquor and Cannabis Board. And as I mentioned earlier, the executive session is expected to last 1 hour, and then we will come back for our tab 5. Thank you, everybody. All right, we are back from the executive session adjourned at 12:19 p.m. And now we will go back into the open meeting for our tab 5, which is to discuss the salary of a public employee. We're back in the meeting at 12:20 p.m. So I think we can just start with a motion.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve a 7.5% raise for Executive Director Griffin, effective as of May 16th, 2025.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. So that concludes our meeting. Is there any public comment? No. All right, perfect. So we are now going to adjourn at 12:21 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.